You know that feeling, right? Like you are just utterly exhausted by Thursday and you're desperately chasing the weekend.
Oh, yeah. Completely drained.
Right. And then the weekend actually hits and it just goes by in a total blur. By Sunday night, there's that familiar hollow ache in your chest, or, maybe finally get that promotion, or you buy that new phone you've been obsessing over for months.
And for about 5 minutes, life is just absolutely perfect.
Exactly. For 5 minutes, you're on top of the world. But then the shiny newness just kind of fades and you are right back on the treadmill, right? Looking for the next thing to fix that subtle, lingering sense of dissatisfaction.
Yeah. It's a deeply relatable, intensely modern feeling.
It really is, especially here in 2026 with, our endless stream of digital distractions. But what if I told you that this exact feeling, this specific modern anxiety, is actually a 2.5 millennia old diagnosis?
I mean, we constantly trick ourselves into thinking our anxiety is this unique product of the digital age, but the underlying mechanics of human dissatisfaction, they haven't changed in thousands of years. The distractions just, got faster.
Right. Which brings us to the material for today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating collection of philosophical texts, ancient mythology, and some modern interpretations of Buddhist philosophy.
And we are centering all of this on one specific, just incredible piece of ancient artwork.
Yeah, the Bhava Chakra, also known as the Tibetan Wheel of Life, or the Wheel of Samsara.
It is such a profoundly dense image, like visually striking, incredibly layered with symbolism, and essentially, well, it's a complete psychological map.
And our mission today isn't to look at this wheel as some, mystical, spooky map of the afterlife. We want to decode this terrifying, beautiful artwork as a deeply relevant blueprint of your own mind.
To discover the historical Buddha's actual method for finally stepping off that exhausting treadmill.
So what does this all mean?
Well, to understand the wheel, you actually have to start by looking at what is holding it. Like, before we even examine the cycle of life itself, we really have to look at the terrifying creature that defines the stakes of the entire system.
Right, because when you look at a painting of the Bhava Chakra, the first thing you notice isn't actually the wheel.
Yeah, not at all.
It's this massive, fearsome, wrathful monster who's just gripping the entire wheel in his hooves and fangs, peering over the top with this terrifying, wide-eyed expression.
Yeah, that's Yama, the lord of the underworld. And Yama has quite the origin story in Buddhist legend.
Oh, it's wild.
It really is. So the story goes that there was a holy man who retreated to a cave to meditate for 50 years. And he believed that at the end of that specific time, he would achieve complete enlightenment.
50 years in a cave.
Right. And he makes it to the 11th month of his 49th year. So he is incredibly close. But then this group of robbers enters his cave to slaughter a bull they've just stolen.
They cut off the bull's head, and then they suddenly realize, uh-oh, there's a witness.
Exactly. So to hide their crime, they cut off the holy man's head too.
Brutal.
Yeah. But the holy man, in his final moments of life, uses his immense spiritual power. He literally picks up the severed bull's head, places it on his own body, and transforms into the wrathful monster Yama.
Oh.
And in his rage, he kills the robbers, drinks their blood, and goes on this massive rampage across Tibet until he is finally defeated by Manjushri, the bodhisattva of wisdom.
Okay, so after his defeat, Yama is transformed from a monster of vengeance into, like, a fierce protector of Buddhism.
Yes, exactly.
It's an intensely graphic visual, but it is really important to note that Yama doesn't represent, evil in the Western demonic sense. He actually represents impermanence and death.
Right, he is inevitable. He's simply the reality that absolutely everything changes and everything ends.
And the wheel he is holding so tightly in his hooves,
Yeah.
that is samsara.
The Buddhist scholar Geshe Namdak gives this brilliant explanation of samsara. He describes it as a contaminated cycle of birth, sickness, aging, and death. Yeah, and he uses the word contaminated very deliberately to mean we have absolutely no control over it.
Like falling asleep and having zero control over a nightmare, or getting completely swept away in an emotional hijack when someone cuts you off in traffic. You're just along for the ride.
Exactly.
And that brings to mind a fantastic analogy from a commentary by Duncan Trussell we looked at. Trussell talks about the massive tension between absolute reality and relative reality.
Oh, I love this part.
Right. Because in our relative reality, we often feel like hypermaterialistic space trash. We are basically nihilists, just acknowledging that we're biological machines needing our morning coffee and water to survive.
Just space trash needing water.
Exactly. But on the other hand, we crave eternalism. We crave an absolute reality where things are permanent, unchanging, and just safe forever.
Yeah.
So, how does this terrifying wheel actually map our messy reality between those two extremes?
What's fascinating here is that the wheel is essentially a map of the entropy of consciousness. Like, it maps exactly how our minds fluctuate between that feeling of being meaningless space trash and the grand illusion that we can achieve eternal perfection.
Okay, let's get into the actual neighborhoods of this map then. Because if we are constantly fluctuating between these extremes, basically trapped in the emotional hijack of samsara, we really need to understand the different zones our minds cycle through.
Definitely.
The Bhava Chakra is divided into 6 sections, the 6 realms. And to be clear to the listener, we shouldn't think of these as literal physical locations you travel to after you die. They are modalities of the human mind.
Yeah, there's psychological states that you cycle through, sometimes over the course of a lifetime, or honestly, sometimes over the course of a single afternoon.
Too true.
So let's start at the very top, the Deva realm, or the realm of the gods. These are the supreme spiritual successes. When you are in this state, you are experiencing immense privilege, wealth, and pleasure-filled longevity.
Wait, hold on. I have to push back a little here.
Okay, go for it.
Because in the Buddhist framework, if you are generous and kind, you accrue merit. Trussell brilliantly compares merit to a sort of metaphysical Bitcoin.
Metaphysical Bitcoin, right?
Right. So you accumulate this merit, and it eventually propels you up into the God realm. But if earning merit gets you to the God realm, and the God realm is ultimate bliss where you have absolutely everything you want, why wouldn't I just want to stay there? That sounds like winning the game. Isn't that the goal?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you'll see why the God realm is actually an enormous trap. It goes back to that idea of entropy.
Okay.
The God realm is entirely dependent on the merit you've saved up. But once you are a god, surrounded by absolute luxury, you are completely insulated from suffering.
You just don't see it anymore.
Exactly. And because you don't see suffering, you stop doing the generous, kind things that earned you that merit in the first place. You're just chilling. Eventually you get bored. Or worse, this flickering thought enters your mind. What if I lose all of this?
Oh, the anxiety creeps in.
Yeah. And the moment you start grasping and worrying about your status, your merit decays. As the philosopher Alan Watts noted, everything that goes up must come down.
Ah, I see. So by becoming hyper-focused on keeping your wealth or your status, you slip right out of the Deva realm and fall into the next section, the Ashura realm, or the jealous gods.
Right. And the jealous gods are hyper-competitive, deeply paranoid, and always fighting the divas for the top spot. Think of, like, power-hungry politicians or ruthless corporate executives.
Always looking upward.
Always. They have immense resources, but they only use them to scheme their way higher up the ladder. They can never just enjoy where they are because they are entirely consumed by what the people above them have.
Man, that sounds exhausting. Then, if we look at the bottom of the wheel, we find the realms of supreme spiritual failure. You have the Naraka realm, the hell beings.
The lowest point.
Yeah. These represent states of pure psychological torment. It can be a fiery torment where a person is furiously angry, aggressive, and abusive, just burning bridges and driving everyone away.
Or it can be an icy torment, where a person is cold, unfeeling, and completely isolated in their own depression.
And right next to the hell beings is the Pretus realm, the hungry ghosts. Visually, these creatures are depicted with enormous bloated bellies, but tiny, needle-thin necks.
Yeah, it's a very striking image.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that image is such a perfect metaphor for modern addiction. The hungry ghost has an immense, ravenous appetite, a giant stomach, but virtually no capacity to satisfy it because of the tiny neck.
Right. No matter how much they consume, it's never enough.
It feels perfectly analogous to doom scrolling. Like you consume hundreds of short videos for 3 hours, desperately looking for that hit of dopamine, but your metaphorical neck is too thin, so you log off feeling entirely empty.
That is the exact psychological mechanism at play. And moving over from there, you have the animal realm. This modality is entirely instinct-driven.
Just pure reaction.
Yes. It is complacent, deeply fearful of the unfamiliar, and completely lacking a sense of humor. When you are in the animal realm, you are just reacting blindly to stimuli, trying to stay comfortable and avoid pain.
Drossel uses this hilarious analogy of his poodle to describe dropping down into these lower realms.
The poodle analogy is great.
It's so good. He says when his poodle hears a loud noise outside, it doesn't pause to ponder the philosophical consequences. It just shrieks, barks, and runs in circles.
It's instant panic.
Yeah. When we fall out of the higher realms because of fear or anger, we basically become shrieking poodles, completely abandoning reason.
Which leaves us with the human realm. This holds the middle position on the wheel. It's defined by a mix of curiosity, passion, and crucially suffering.
The middle ground.
Right, because it holds this middle ground. You have enough awareness to see the suffering, but not so much luxury that you ignore it. It is uniquely the only realm where liberation from the entire wheel is actually possible.
Okay, let's unpack this. If climbing to the very top of the wheel just ensures you'll eventually drop back to the bottom and become a shrieking poodle, what is the engine that keeps this miserable carnival ride moving?
What's powering it all?
Exactly, what provides the power? To find out, we really have to zoom in on the very dead center of the Bhava Chakra.
The hub of the wheel. Here, you don't find gods or humans. You find three animals, a rooster, a snake, and a pig.
And they are biting each other's tails.
Yes, forming a tight, vicious circle. The rooster represents craving and greed. The snake represents aversion and hatred, and the pig represents ignorance and delusion.
They just feed off one another in this endless loop. So your ignorance of how reality works leads to a craving for things you don't have. And when that craving goes unmet, it turns into anger and aversion.
And that anger simply deepens your ignorance. To really understand how this engine works on a daily basis, we have to connect it to the teachings of the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. He stepped away from his own life of absolute luxury to understand why this wheel spins. And he laid out the mechanics in his Four Noble Truths.
Okay, lay them on me.
The first truth is dukkha, which translates to suffering. But we need to make a crucial distinction here. Dukkha isn't just catastrophic suffering like, getting a terminal illness or breaking your arm.
It's more subtle than that.
It's way more insidious. It is that subtle, constant tension in the back of your mind. It's the boredom on a Tuesday afternoon. It's the creeping fear of aging. It's that nagging feeling that no matter what you have, something is missing.
Which naturally brings us to the second truth, samudaya, the origin of that suffering. The Buddha realized that the origin of dukkha isn't the external world happening to us, it is our own internal mental state.
Specifically, it is craving. It's that rooster in the center of the wheel.
And when we look closely at craving, we see it actually takes three distinct forms. First, there's the craving for sensory pleasures like wanting the tastiest food or the absolute softest bed.
Second, there's the craving to be something you aren't, like the desire to be a famous influencer or a millionaire or just someone who is universally liked.
And third, there is the craving not to be, which is, the desperate desire for a painful or awkward situation to just stop existing immediately. We constantly deploy these cravings to try and fix our underlying sense of dukkha.
But it never works.
Never. It reminds me of this incredible concept from the sources that perfectly illustrates how backwards our approach is. When we suffer, our instinct is to try and self-care our way out of it by being intensely selfish. We fixate inward.
Right.
But it's like furiously scratching your leg when it's actually your back that itches.
That's a great way to put it.
You're putting in all this intense effort, but you aren't solving the actual problem. The actual relief, that feeling of lightness or merit, only comes the moment you stop fixating on yourself and start helping someone else.
And that captures the tragedy of our modern culture perfectly. Like, instead of teaching us to look closely at our suffering, our culture actively feeds the pig, the snake, and the rooster.
Oh, constantly.
The messaging we get every single day is that you can completely avoid suffering if you just buy a faster internet connection, or lose 10 pounds, or drink the right brand of beer. The entire modern economy is built on telling us that the treadmill can be won.
But we know the treadmill can't be won. The top of the wheel always falls back to the bottom. So we've diagnosed the illness dukkha, and we found the engine, the three poisons of craving, aversion, and ignorance. So how do we actually break the wheel? How do we escape the cycle?
Well, I think of Alan Watts here. He said, by becoming better, you tie yourself to the wheel by gold chains, by retrogressing with iron chains.
Wow.
The goal of this philosophy isn't to trade your iron chains for gold chains so you can live in the God realm. The goal is no chains. The Buddha's method removes the chains altogether.
And that introduces the third noble truth, nirodha, or cessation. It's the profound realization that the things we are craving are actually fantasies, but getting there isn't easy. It requires radical self-inquiry.
Take the example of a habitual smoker. You don't just tell them to stop smoking. That rarely works. You have them deeply question why they crave the cigarette in the first place.
Like, what are you actually looking for?
Exactly. What exactly do they think inhaling that smoke is going to fix about their internal state? Once you begin that inquiry, you realize the craving is a false promise. But, you need a method to sustain that clarity.
And that method is the fourth noble truth, Magga, the path. It's often referred to as the middle way. It is the active rejection of both extreme luxury and extreme deprivation, basically embracing the concept of just enough.
The practical toolkit for this middle way is the Noble Eightfold Path. It is essentially divided into 3 disciplines. Let's look at Sila, or ethics first. This covers right speech, right action, and right livelihood. It involves behaving in a way that doesn't harm others.
I have to ask, though, because this doesn't really sound like a quick 5-minute life hack. If we are completely stuck in the mud of this wheel, experiencing a massive emotional hijack, does taking right action or forcing ourselves to use right speech pull us out of the wheel immediately? Like, does biting my tongue when I want to snap at a coworker actually enlighten me?
This raises an important question about how the escape mechanism actually functions. The texts, especially Geshe Namdak, make it clear that samsara and nirvana are both entirely created by the mind.
Okay.
When you force yourself to use right speech like stopping yourself from snapping at that coworker, you are literally interrupting the cycle of the snake, the aversion. You aren't fully enlightened yet, but you are subduing the mind temporarily. You are stopping the shovel so you don't dig the hole any deeper.
Ah, I see. You stop feeding the engine.
Exactly. But ethics alone don't pull you out. That brings us to the second discipline, samadhi, or mental discipline. This includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration.
So training your focus.
Yeah, this is the practice of training your attention so you can clearly see when the rooster or the snake are trying to take control.
Which lays the groundwork for the final discipline.
Yes. Prajna, or wisdom, encompassing right view and right intention. While ethics stop you from digging and mental discipline focuses your attention, it is prajna, the deep understanding of reality and the nature of impermanence, that actually cuts the root of the ignorance. You have to see through the illusion of the pig to finally step off the wheel.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We have mapped a fascinating journey from the terrifying, inevitable grip of Yama, through the psychological trapdoors of the 6 realms, down into the animalistic engine of our own endless cravings, and finally, to the middle way out.
It's quite the journey.
It really is. And here is the reality. Every single time you find yourself doom scrolling for an hour looking for a hit of dopamine, or every time you violently lash out at someone in traffic, or obsess late into the night over a promotion you didn't get, you are actively spinning the Bhava Chakra.
You're pushing the wheel.
Right. In those moments, you are literally inhabiting the psychological realm of the hungry ghost, the angry hell being, or the shrieking poodle. But because you are here right now in the human realm, you have a unique power that the distracted gods and the reactive animals just don't have. You have the ability to recognize the craving, feel the subtle tension of the suffering, and actively choose to step off the ride.
It is a profound responsibility, but also an incredible liberating opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. We talked extensively about the center of the wheel, but the very outermost rim of the Bhava Chakra contains 12 distinct images, known as the links of dependent origination.
The outer edges.
Yeah. And the very first link, the tiny spark that starts the entire massive wheel turning before being is even born, is depicted simply as a blind person. It represents ignorance. If a lack of vision is the very first spark of all the exhausting cycles in our lives, what is the blind spot in your own life right at this exact moment? What is the one thing you are failing to clearly see that is keeping you chained to that endless, exhausting treadmill?
That is the ultimate question we all have to answer for ourselves.
Something to think about the next time you find yourself desperately chasing the weekend.